I would say don't ignore operations. Obviously, I'm coming from a little biased perspective there, but the amount of time and energy that I continually see small businesses and startups waste by just focusing on the sales and marketing and not the internal operation pieces. What tends to happen in organizations is that they build out the sales funnel, they build out the marketing, they build out all these pieces, but they don't touch the internal operation pieces, those cross-departmental functions, the accounting, the finance, the HR, legal, et cetera. And what tends to happen is the CEO, founder, owner, whatever you want to call them, gets pulled down into the operation stuff, which tends to be far more administrative and less strategic at that point. And so it divides their attention between these administrative functions and the strategy and growth of their company. So I really advise people, like, one of the first hires that anyone should make is an operations manager.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of The Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as a founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where he helps startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast. John Bassford, and John started his journey in growing up in a small town in Illinois. I went to a small school and then to a small college, got a political science degree, and then went off to DC after graduation. Afterwards, went to the law school in Ohio, and then went to work for a legal organization. I figured I didn't necessarily want to be an attorney, so went to a startup and worked on the operational side, and then went to be a COO at another organization. And then after that, went out on his own, started doing consulting, and looked towards helping startups with the operational side of their business. So with that much as an introduction, welcome on the podcast, John.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I just gave a quick overview to a much longer journey. So why don't we rewind and unpack that just a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started growing up in a small town in Illinois.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Decatur, Illinois. It is a factory and farm area. You look at a map, north, south, east, west, it's right in the middle of the state. So not surrounded by a whole lot, but I pretty much from birth to through college. That's where I was born and raised. Went to college there in my hometown. Actually, my mom worked there and put herself and 3 kids through college for free by working there. So that's quite an incentive to stay there and go to college.
So now you go there, you go to college, and I think you studied political science. Is that right?
I was a philosophy major with a minor in political science. When I spent the semester in DC, that was a political science program. So that gave me kind of enough credits to might as well minor in political science as well. So I did that and ended college with both those, and then went on to law school pretty much immediately thereafter.
Perfect. And what was the plan always after going into political science to go off to law school, or kind of go be an attorney, or kind of what was the plan as you continued on after undergraduate?
Yeah, I mean, the plan was always go to law school. I don't know that there was an enormous plan beyond that, and maybe there should have been in hindsight. But I was one of those argumentative, analytical kids growing up my entire life, and just always told, hey, you'll be a great lawyer one day, right? And I'm not saying that that's why I went there, but it really kind of fit me, my personality, and went to law school, and just quite frankly, just law school is a different beast, right? As you know, being there and around everybody, I just wasn't quite sure I wanted to practice law when I left. And I fell into working for a legal organization. I was a member of a law school. So that launched a career in associations, which is really where I really built my career. But my second role beyond that one is where I really launched my career in operations. And there was an interesting thing that occurred. It was a startup trade association in the tech space that worked with startups. So I kind of had this double immersion into the startup world. It allowed me to not just manage operations, but learn about the launch of operations and putting the right pieces in place to really create streamlined and effective operations. And then beyond that, obviously, I was really exposed to a lot of other startups and how they work and that network and that sort of thing, and just really got ingrained in that startup world.
So now, one maybe follow up or just rewind just a little bit on the journey, which is so you go to undergraduate, you go to law school. You know, both of those are pretty extensive endeavors, take a lot of time and effort. Having gone through law school and gotten as well. Now, as you're coming out of law school, kind of and getting into the corporate world, and you went and worked for a legal organization for a period of time. Kind of, what was it that or pushed you, maybe away from the practice of law and more towards the startup arena?
Well, I mean, quite frankly, I will be completely honest. Part of it was, I came off, going to law school was difficult for me because I came from a background where school was always extremely, extremely easy for me. Um, High school, salutatorian, never studied, graduated college with a 3.5, didn't really study. I mean, I did what I had to do, right, to get A's and that sort of thing. But going to law school really was a really kind of a different beast for me. And to be quite honest, I didn't have the study skills coming right out of undergrad into law school to really kind of buckle down and make the most of it. So I'm not saying that that's all of it, right? But as you're aware that when you go to law school, majority of people don't feel like they're equipped to practice law when they leave law school. We learn, and as you know, we learn how to think like lawyers more than we learn how to practice law. And I think there was just a lack of confidence there. And quite frankly, immediately after graduating law school, I got this offer to go work for this company. My goal was to end up in Washington, D.C. They were based in Baltimore. I'm like, that's pretty damn close. So it really kind of all worked out, and it really built a great career. And obviously, I never planned on having this operational career, but as I got into the association world and got into the corporate world, I just really realized that my diversity of skills and intellect really lent itself well to overseeing internal operations, where you kind of have to be a jack of all trades type of mentality.
No, makes perfect sense. So now so you come out, you say, okay, and I have, plenty of friends, some that love the practice of law and been in it for a while, and others that, you get in it for a few years and say, hey, this isn't for me, or I'm not, don't want to do it anymore, or, become jaded with the legal system or any number of things. And so, look for maybe what matches other sets of skills outside of the legal practice. And so it sounds like you found a bit on the operational side. So you went off and worked for a startup before kind of working up to in another organization up to the COO position. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So the Startup Trade Association, you started as a kind of director of operations role, and over the years became VP of operations. At one point, we had staff on 2 continents. Really that kind of was a really fun experience as launching operations, not just in the U.S. but another country was quite an experience. And so from there, I did that. The organization kind of had a wind down, didn't completely close up, but just changed its business model entirely to where a majority of the staff were laid off. So that's always a fun endeavor when you're literally handling the logistics of your own layoff. But from there, I went to become COO of a national collegiate organization, and really loved that role as well. And then when I left there, two former bosses of mine came to me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a new nonprofit, a new for-profit. Need you to launch operations for us the way you did before." Another one said, "Hey, I know what you're doing for him. Know someone who needs your services." And so quickly carved out this niche of launching operations for these startups and then staying on as a fractional COO for them.
Hmm. So now you go and you start to go down. Hey, you find I'll say a bit of your niche or a way or a place that you could apply your skills. And I think that often lines up. Legal side, you're looking at how to break things down, how to analyze it, and oftentimes that serves well in the operational side. So you start to do the COO position and the other organization, and then it sounds like you kind of started to move into consulting now. At one point, did you say, hey, I'm going to go do consulting full time, or I want to run my own business, or kind of, did you do that, on as a side hustle, or you're still doing it as a side hustle, or kind of walk us through kind of
Sure.
how that evolved?
Yes. So a couple of things. Certainly throughout my last 2 roles as a W-2 employee, I did have some side projects and operations that I did. So I kind of somewhat began my consulting before doing it full time. one of the things that really kind of made me interested in taking on the consultant route was my last role that I had. There were a couple ideas and strategies that I had that I continually was trying to convince the CEO to adopt, and it just was falling on deaf ears, right? And then lo and behold, someone outside of the organization, consultant, whatever it may be, comes in and says, "Hey, I think you should do X, Y, and Z." Literally the thing I've been pitching for months, right? And all of a sudden it's the best idea ever. We're ready to execute on that. And I was like, man, I was like, sometimes really to get heard and to have more influence, you need to be an outsider with it that's seen as an expert. Even though I was COO of the organization and ran all day-to-day operations, I was not seen as the expert in that type of situation. And so that's really what got me thinking about moving to consulting, wanting to grow, create a business, wanting to earn more money, be more impactful for what I did. So it all really worked out very, very well in the end.
No, it sounds like it ended up being a great opportunity. So now, so you decided, and it's kind of like sometimes I'd almost correlate it with raising kids in the sense that kids, if their parents tell them something, even if they're in that position of authority and they are the
Yeah.
ones that know better, the kids hear it from the parents and they blow them off. Or they say you don't know what you're talking about. They hear it from a friend or from someone else that they trust or rely on that's outside of the familiar setup, and it can be the exact same thing, and they'll listen to them and go out and do it. And so I think sometimes that same idea of the organization, they may not, they may get have more impact when it comes from what it feels to be the outsider from an outside lens looking in. And so you went out and started doing the consulting, started helping startups with their operational side of the business. Now what kind of what period of time, or when did you to make that jump to doing that full time?
Yeah, so that was would have been in 2018 when I did that. So I've been doing this now for 6 years. Had to do the math real quick. So yeah, it's and really, obviously, anytime you go out on your own, that first year is always the toughest. Luckily, I had some initial work that really stepped in there. But when I talked about, these bosses come to me, this isn't in month one. One of them did for the initial organization, but again, that wasn't enough to kind of really sustain, even be at my salary range I was at beforehand. So it took about a year into it to where that's kind of really I started humming along. And right around that year mark is like it went 0 to 60. It went from having one steady client with a little bit of consulting on the side to pretty much a little bit after a year, having more work than knew to do with, and could not take on any more at all. Obviously, I'm making more money than I've ever had before. As we all know, in a W-2 role, you're especially salaried. You are paid for doing a job, and your direct time and effort into that role doesn't always directly influence what your pay is. This is the first time in my life where the amount of time and effort I was putting into my projects was directly influencing the money I was bringing home. And so I was working as much as possible. Obviously, shortly into my consulting career is when COVID began, and so that made things more interesting as well.
Oh, awesome. So no, and it is always I don't know, exciting and rewarding to see, hey, as I put in more time and effort, there's a direct correlation. Now, it doesn't always mean, as you said, right out of the chute, you're just making more money than you know what to do with, but you can at least see, hey, I'm, for better or for worse, what I put in is what I get out, and it all falls on you, and it's not relying on someone else. So now walk us through, because you've been doing it for 6 years. You mentioned kind of a year after a year, you started to get some pretty good traction and started to have more business and outstrip your ability. So did you start to scale back, start to raise rates, start to bring people on, kind of hit a steady state? In other words, how are things? Walk us through how are things evolved over the last 6 years?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it would have been. So I kind of carried on that pathway for 3 years. So around 2021 is right before 2021 is when I started really thinking about what my role was in these organizations. And as much as I love the client work I'm doing and have done, it put me in a situation where I was both junior and senior level person. I was the sole operations person, which meant I was doing everything. I was not as strategic. Obviously, as well, I was at a point where I couldn't scale anymore. It was all, the consulting, the fractional work was all me, all my time, and that was the correlation to the pay. So I started thinking about what is I can do with with what I'm doing to help me scale, help me grow. And the pathway for that was obviously to bring on some bookkeepers, HR administrators, that sort of thing, to backfill some of the more administrative work of operations so that I could focus on the strategy. I started doing that, and around that time, we actually helped two of my direct clients get the employee retention credit through the CARES Act and COVID relief program. And someone actually reached out to me and said, "Hey, there's a business model with ERC. It's kind of gotten a bad name these days with some of the IRS changes, but I ended up getting involved. We ended up getting involved in that. I brought on someone's staff to help me with sales and client relations. But when the dust settles and IRS starts processing ERC again, we will have help give back $50 million to small businesses and nonprofits through that program. And that really allowed me to take a break from the fractional work. I kept some of my clients, some legacy clients, ones that were ready to transition and hire someone internally, let them go. No fight, no argument there. And so it really allowed me to have this transition period, because that was such a short-term project that we're working on, but it was eating the majority of our time. Well, coming out of that in late 2023, I began to transition my business by thinking, all right, what is it that I do, right? I mean, other than the fractional work itself, what is it that I'm trying to do for companies? How am I trying to improve them? And so I kind of boiled my services down to some products. So we're focusing more on coaching and advising junior people in operations, helping to elevate them, helping them to reduce learning curves, trial and error. We're also a big focus of what we're doing right now is auditing operations for businesses and nonprofits. That's something a lot of people don't do. You might have someone come in and audit your marketing processes, your sales process, but looking at a full 360 of your business, today's entrepreneurial world is all about 10xing your business. And they usually are teaching you how to do that for one of two ways, right? Through mindset, which isn't going to execute for you, but get you in the right place, or sales. But the problem with both of those is that it doesn't touch your operations. And if your operations isn't set up correctly, anything you build is going to potentially crash, or revert back to where it was, because you don't have those systems and processes in place. They're going to allow you to scale. So we're really kind of looking at, the growth and scaling of companies from that perspective, and making sure that they have the right systems and processes in place, and the right maturity in their operations to really be able to grow.
No, that makes perfect sense. Sounds like continue to figure things out and improve and evolve over the course of the business. So now, if you were to look kind of and say, okay, that's it takes you to kind of where you're at today, over, and start to touch on it, but kind of if you're to look now out at the next 6 to 12 months, kind of where do you see things headed next, or what's in store for you guys?
Yes. So the main thing is, obviously, for me in my journey, as I mentioned, kind of starting out, it was all through my network and my reputation for bosses I worked for. Now I'm entering this new world, this new angle where I'm having to go out and find clients, right? It's going beyond my network. So we're still a little bit in that transition phase of testing the market with the right audiences and with the right messages, is to really resonate with potential clients on how it is that we can help them grow and scale. So we're still kind of in the little beginning stages of this process. So the goal, by the end of this year, is really be humming along, right? Have the coaching program fully launched with dozens of individuals in it, as well as on a pathway to really be doing at least 5 audits a month, to really help businesses grow. Obviously, it's a little intensive, but we have this great process that really can take what normally is multiple consultants over months, if not years, of them coming in and touching each little part of operations or your business one by one. We have a way to kind of come in and comprehensively take a look at that in as little as 2 weeks, provide you a roadmap of like, look, this is where you are. These are the areas that you need to improve if you want to maximize your revenue and growth. So,
No,
yeah,
sounds
so,
like
so the goal really is just to make sure have all this up and running, and have the pipeline full, and really out there just trying to help as many businesses and nonprofits grow as possible.
That's awesome. Sounds like it's a great path yet ahead. A lot of great opportunities, and certainly it'll be fun to watch and see how things continue to iterate and evolve for you. So Well, with that, now as we kind of reach the present day of the journey and even looking a bit into the future, where things are headed, great time to transition towards the two questions I like to ask towards the end of each episode. So we're going to jump to those now. So the first question I always like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made? What'd you learn from it?
Sure. For a lot of people, I fill a void for them, right? Where operations is not their strong suit. My not the part of my business that's not my strong suit is the marketing and sales. I'm a very direct, straightforward person. So the marketing and sales is sometimes not the most intuitive to me. Um, so I relied a lot on third party partners, and I wasted a lot of time and money on working with third party partners when it came to marketing. One thing that someone said to me throughout this journey is, John, at a certain point, you have got to learn before going to another partner, before working with another third party, you've got to learn how this works so that you can help guide the process. And so I think there's some truth to that in some aspects. I'm still willing to let go for some other people, but it did really hit home a point that there are some parts of your business that you have to control. The marketing, the brand, there's some degree you have to control that. And by relinquishing that to other people, things are going to get missed. So there's make sure that, for any business owners out there, make sure you understand what you're getting involved in and make sure you understand who you're working with and where they fall into what you're trying to build.
No, makes perfect sense, and definitely a great learning and a great takeaway. So now the second question I'd like to ask is, so now if you're talking, and kind of goes along with what you just said, but now you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you give them?
Sure. I would say don't ignore operations. Obviously, I'm coming from a little biased perspective there, but the amount of time and energy that I continually see small businesses and startups waste by just focusing on the sales and marketing and not the internal operation pieces. What tends to happen in organizations is that they build out the sales funnel, they build out the marketing, they build out all these pieces, but they don't touch the internal operation pieces, those cross-departmental functions, the accounting, the finance, the HR, legal, et cetera. And what tends to happen is the CEO, founder, owner, whatever you want to call them, gets pulled down into the operation stuff, which tends to be far more administrative and less strategic at that point. And so it divides their attention between these administrative functions and the strategy and growth of their company. So I really advise people, like, one of the first hires that anyone should make is an operations manager. Having someone who takes care of all those internal operation pieces, someone you trust that knows what they're doing, knows how to do it, will be honest and transparent when things are wrong, but really have that reliable person to make sure all those internal operation pieces are flowing correctly and efficient and effective. That's really one of the best things I think any entrepreneur or small business startup should be doing, is really focusing on that. That's actually one reason why another service that we're getting ready to launch is placing fractional operations managers. A lot of people I was talking to when talking about recruitment, small businesses, startups, there's a fear factor of hiring W-2, right? It's a longer commitment. Not sure that they're quite ready to make that move, but by hiring fractional people, that's something that's very common, again, in sales and marketing and other areas, but not as common in operations. But hiring that fractional person that keeps the glue together in your internal operations and really can make sure everything is moving forward correctly.
No, I think that's definitely a great piece of advice and a great takeaway. So, well, now as we do wrap towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Sure. So my website is www.think-lateral.com. And then my email address is Jon at think-lateral.com. Those are two of the best ways to reach out to us. And if we can be of any help, let us know. I love working with startups, love working with small businesses. If there's something that we can do to help your organization, always happy to jump on a free initial consult and see what's going on and see how we can help.
Awesome. Well, definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, make a new connection. If nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that, thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you their listeners are out there, if you'd like to be guests on the podcast or newly launched Inventive Fireside series, feel free to go to inventiveunicorn.com. Glad to be on the show. A couple more things as listeners. Make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if you ever need help along your journey with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup, your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we're always here to help. Well, thank you again, John, for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks for having me.